The mountains of our world are treasures for many reasons. Their ancient presence makes them a vital part of Earth's history, and over the years, discoveries made within and atop these mountains have reshaped our understanding of many mysteries. From the legendary Big Gray Man to Noah's Ark, here are 20 strange things found on mountains. Number 20. Big Gray Man. If you live in the United Kingdom, you have likely heard the legend that surrounds the Big Gray Man. There are actually very few people who have ever seen the creature, or maybe there are a lot, and they just did not live to tell the tale. Whatever the case, there have been plenty of strange sensations on the mountain where it's found that are felt by mountaineers. The man apparently lives at the summit of the mountain and has such a presence that you can feel him before you ever see him, and the sound of thumping footsteps is the calling card that precedes your doom. Now, naturally, there have been so-called pictures taken of the creature, but they've never ever been clear enough, and video footage, just like with Bigfoot, is spotty at best. People do truly believe that the creature and/or man is out there. So, the next time you're climbing around some mountains in the UK, you may want to watch your back and keep your ears wide open. Number 19. The Kalasha. Who are the Kalasha? Well, they are people native to Pakistan who specifically live in areas near or around the Hindu Kush Mountains. Specifically, they tend to reside in places like the Kalasha valleys, which are directly surrounded by the mountains themselves, and so they qualify for this list. What's important about these people, though, is that they're a small group acting differently than most others in Pakistan. For example, if I were to ask you about the religion of Pakistan, you would likely say Islam if you're educated, as that's the dominant religion in the Middle East. However, the Kalasha people believe in animism, which is the practice of believing that everything in the world has a special spirit within it. From people to animals and various objects we use every day, everything is alive in its own little way. As you can imagine, that's quite a difference from Islam, and that would define them as being strange to most people's minds. That also includes the main bodies of people in Pakistan who have tried to forcibly convert the Kalasha people to Islam, but it has never really worked out, nor should it, because nothing good comes from trying to force a religion on a person. That's not the only strange thing about them, though. They claim to descend from the armies of Alexander who were left behind from his armed campaign, though there's actually no evidence for him to have even passed through the area. Then again, you have to wonder why they would make such a claim if they weren't privy to some of Alexander the Great's people being in the Hindu Kush mountain area and beyond. They're also considered by some to be descendants of the Gandhari people, who lived around parts of India from the Iron Age. Regardless of any of this, the Kalasha people live on, and they continue to fight persecution for their beliefs while maintaining a lifestyle and faith in the face of fear and hate. Number 18. Salong Tunnel. Before we get into the unique discoveries that were made on various mountains of the world, I'm going to head back to the Hindu Kush Mountains once more to talk about a particular kind of use that mountains sometimes have, specifically a way to get through them. While mountains are great, they can sometimes be in the way, and thus it forces people to have to go over them or around them, both of which can be tiring, time-consuming, and often dangerous processes. So when people found the means, they began to make tunnels that would go through the mountains, thus shortening their travel times. That's where the Salong Tunnel comes into play. It was made through the Hindu Kush Mountains by the Soviet Union all the way back in the 1960s. That might not be what you would expect, but it was during the time when they were dominating the Middle East, and thus they decided to open things up in places like Afghanistan. In fact, this tunnel was so important to the country of Afghanistan that it's hailed as the economic artery of the region due to how primitive the transportation system is without it. This tunnel cuts through the Hindu Kush and connects Kabul to northern Afghanistan via a mostly two-lane highway that winds through dangerous switchbacks high up in the mountains. But its height and length are only part of the danger. When it was built back in the 1960s, it was meant to handle about 1,000 cars per day. But before a major overhaul of the tunnel in 2015, 50-plus years later, the country was sending almost 9,000 cars through there. That made the tunnel one of the most dangerous of its kind in the entire world. Traffic and road damage began to build up until finally, a budget was given for the overhaul, making the tunnel a whole lot safer. What's really strange, though, is that it took so long to happen, but at least it happened in the end. Number 17. Clear ice. At first, the idea of clear ice doesn't seem all that strange. I mean, after all, ice can be like glass in a lot of ways, including its magnification properties and reflectiveness, and it's easy to break. So why would it be odd that ice could be clear? Well, think about it like this. If you go to your refrigerator right now and you pull out an ice cube, could you see perfectly through it? Well, more than likely, no. However, in 2014, over in Slovakia's High Tatras mountain range, a couple found themselves on a lake that had ice so clear that you couldn't actually see the ice itself. Instead, what you saw was actually below it, and from two different viewpoints, from a distance and from the perspective of the man walking across the water, you could tell that he was walking on ice, but it was really super clear. Naturally, a lot of people called it a hoax, but that would have been quite the trick given how long the video was and the perspectives that were filmed. Another thing to note here is that there are people who can make clear ice. It just involves properly agitating the ice to get rid of the water's impurities and give it the clear results that people look for. If done properly, you can turn a block of ice into a magnifying glass of sorts and then use the rays of the sun to actually start a fire with the ice, as has been proven on Mythbusters. The catch is that we can't say for certain that we know nature can do this, as this is obviously not something you see every day. But given all the other things that it can do. Number 16. Iong Pipes. This next one technically falls into the conspiracy theory category, but it's one that you can actually see with your own two eyeballs, and it's clearly been around for quite some time. Up on Mount Baigong in China lies a series of structures that can only be described as pipe-like, as in they look like pipes that are coming out of the mountain. Just as importantly, they're not located in one spot on the mountain but several, and they have different shapes, sizes, and even bends depending on where you might find them. When the Chinese media stations found them, they immediately tried to do research on them and ended up helping to build conspiracy theories because 8% of the materials comprising the pipes were unidentified. That's interesting, but it's not really proof of anything otherworldly or even high-tech. Naturally, people think that it's some kind of proof of ancient high-tech societies. Instead, other scientists who clearly know what they're doing and live in this day and age, with common sense, note that they're likely nothing more than fossilized trees that the mountains grew over. In fact, structures like these have been found on other continents, including in North America. It is very cool looking, there's no doubt about that, but is it really proof of ancient aliens or anything of the like? Well, you let me know in the comments section down below. Now it's time for today's topic. A man was hiking on the snow-capped peaks of Mount Adams in Washington on May 18, 1980, unaware that he was about to witness one of the most destructive volcanic eruptions in U.S. history. The air was calm, the sky clear, and he was enjoying the scenic views across the valley when a distant rumble broke the silence. He turned his gaze toward Mount St Helens, standing tall and majestic in the distance. To his astonishment, smoke began to rise from the summit. An ominous plume that signaled something extraordinary was unfolding. Grabbing his camera, he captured the first few shots, not knowing he was about to witness a once-in-a-lifetime event. Within moments, the rumbling intensified, and a massive explosion tore through the mountain, blowing off the entire upper section of the peak. A colossal cloud of ash, rock, and gas erupted, forming an enormous plume that rose miles into the sky. The shockwave was so powerful that it leveled everything in its path, transforming the landscape into a barren wasteland. As he continued to photograph the eruption, the man felt both awe and terror at the sheer force of nature unfolding before him. His photos would later become some of the most iconic images of the Mount St. Helens eruption, capturing a rare perspective of the cataclysmic event from a nearby peak. This eruption ultimately claimed 57 lives, caused extensive damage, and left a lasting scar on the land. His incredible photographs serve as a haunting reminder of the power and unpredictability of nature. Number 15. Hidden plane crash jewels. Now, I told you before that mountains are places where all kinds of things can happen, and sadly, not all of them are good. People die on mountains all the time, and places like Mount Everest get all kinds of tourists during the climbing season, which ups the chances for a death. Then there are things like plane crashes. These take place in the mountains more than many would care to admit, and due to their high-up landing spots, sometimes they just cannot be salvaged. Such was the case for a pair of planes that crashed in the French Alps back in 1950 and 1966. The two planes crashed in the Alps, and the mountain slowly covered up what was left behind. Fast forward to 2013, and a mountain climber came upon one of the crashes, but it's unclear which one it was, and they found a set of jewels hidden beneath the ice inside a chest. The irony is many-fold here. First, the jewels were stated to be worth about £200,000, which would have made the man quite rich if he had not decided to turn them over to the police. Why did he do that? Because he knew the jewels belonged to someone who had died in that crash. Secondly, when legends spread about the jewels hidden in the plane, people rushed in to try and get them for themselves. However, by the time they got there, the ice had pushed the chest quite a ways away, and they were looking in the wrong place. While there were still many questions about the jewels, the fact that they were found at all, basically 50 or 60 years after the planes had crashed, is something that a lot of people are really amazed by, and they likely wish they had found them first and kept them. Number 14. Otzi the Iceman. If you wanted to see Otzi the Iceman, you would have to go to a small town called Bolzano, Italy. I'm going to step away from planes for a moment to talk about arguably one of the most important archaeological findings in the history of mountains. That would be Otzi the Iceman. He was discovered in 1991 in the Ötztal Alps by two German tourists who were mountain climbing. When they discovered him, they initially thought it might have been a fellow climber who had sadly died in an ascent. However, when they looked at the body, they saw that it was pretty much mummified, and after some analysis, it's believed that Otzi had lived between the years of 3350 and 3105 BC. That would place him within Europe's Copper Age, and he is the oldest mummy of his kind within the continent. But if he were frozen and not inside an Egyptian pyramid, how does that classify him as a mummy, you may be asking? The answer is that not all mummies are placed in pyramids or tombs. Mummification, at its most basic, is just about preserving the body and ensuring that it endures in certain ways over the years. You can preserve something by freezing it, as you all should know via the food you likely keep in your freezer. So, having a human body, which is basically meat and water, be all high up on a mountain for thousands of years, that's going to make a pretty well-preserved mummy. Number 13. Ancient nanostructures. Now I'm about to go down a really big rabbit hole here. In the Ural Mountains, there was allegedly a finding that would shake up human history as we know it. Nanospirals were discovered in several places within the mountain. Specifically, they were clearly man-made structures that were not only detailed but also so small that the eye could barely see them by itself. Obviously, that raises all kinds of questions about not only when they were made but why they were there in the mountains. Many people who dive down that rabbit hole believe that it's proof of an ancient high-tech civilization that would have had the ability not only to craft them but to make them in such a small size with such precision. Others, who live in the real world are not so convinced. Many people feel that these ancient nanostructures were faked for one reason or another, and it wouldn't be the first time that something like this was faked in the name of opening minds. To be fair, there have been legitimate findings in both mountains and beyond that have rewritten history due to what's been discovered from a technology standpoint, but it was never anything of this nature. Number 12. World War II plane. Now we're doing another crash story, but this one has a set of twists within it. In the Bernese Alps back in 2018, a melting glacier revealed the wreckage of a plane from World War II. The C-53 Skytrooper Dakota was traveling from Austria to Italy when it collided with a glacier at a rather high altitude on November 19, 1946. The plane's crew, thankfully, did not perish in the crash, though some were injured. Over time, that glacier slowly covered up the debris, and then the Earth began to warm up. In 2012, 3 young people discovered the plane's propeller on the glacier. As it continued to melt, the scene slowly turned into a field covered in plane debris. There are many things at work here that are both curious and strange. The first is how nature was able to cover up the wreckage over time, only for it to be revealed again later on. And that brings us to the topic of global warming and climate change. If the glacier had not melted, the plane would have likely been covered up for a much longer time. But instead, it continued to melt until all was revealed, and by that token, more will be revealed as it continues to happen. Number 11. Abominable snowman. Yeah, we're not done with the rabbit holes and conspiracy theories and general nonsense of the world. Oh no. This time, we're getting into one of the most famous of mountain legends, the abominable snowman, also known as the Yeti. There have been various tales and sightings of this creature over the years, but in 2016, there was a straight-up scare in the Pyrenees Mountains of northeast Spain when a video seemed to catch the Yeti on camera moving through the higher parts of the mountains. They then searched the area where the footage was allegedly shot and found nothing, so it may have been a hoax, or the Yeti might just be really good at hiding. Number 10. Inca Maiden. Now we'll head to South America for this next one because we're going to talk about another mummy, one of a 500-year-old girl who was discovered in the Andes Mountains. But what made this Inca Maiden so special was just how well-preserved she was. Despite being found in 1995 and being a really old mummy, she looked like she had just recently died. As in, she was so perfectly preserved that just about everything on her body looked fresh. In fact, the 2 people who discovered her believed that she had died only days before, only realizing the truth when they got a better look. She's considered to be the best preserved mummy in the world today, and it's not hard to see why when you look at just how lifelike she is. In terms of how well preserved her insides were, scientists were actually able to tell that she was sick only days before she died in the mountain. But why was she in the mountain in the first place? Well, that's part of Incan culture, and they used her as a sacrifice to the gods. Number 9. Mount Nyangani. Now, if you liked that creepy tale, well, good, because here's another mountain like that in the world, and it's called Mount Nyangani. This mountain has a specific nickname that many of you will probably fear. It's called the mountain that swallows people. And before you ask, yes, there are many tales of people who have vanished on this mountain that have helped to build up the legend, including the daughters of government officials. Not only that, it's completely random what happens to these people. Sometimes one man actually went missing for 4 days as he was climbing around the mountain, and when he was finally discovered, he thought it had only been a few hours since he had started hiking. There have also been claims of interesting creatures up on the mountain, so you might want to think twice before you consider going and climbing there. Number 8. Viking Sword. And now, let's head over to something that is just a little bit less gruesome, shall we? In Norway back in 2017, a group of reindeer hunters were going through a rather high place in a mountain area when they stumbled across something metal that they never expected to find. Specifically, they found themselves looking at a sword. They then took it and gave it to scientists, who determined that the sword was 1,200 years old and actually belonged to a Viking. The sword had been wedged between two rocks on a plain filled with small rocks that peppered the Norwegian countryside, known as scree. While it's true that many of the finer details of the blade had worn away or even rusted, the sword's shape was very much intact, which many attributed to the low pressures and temperatures of the mountainous area. Ironically, scientists later went to that area to try and find more artifacts, but they just couldn't find any, which is strange when you consider that artifacts like these are sometimes bundled together. However, that also led to their belief that the sword was merely left there by the person who owned it, raising even more mysteries as a result. Number 7. Leaf fossils. I'm going to ease myself out of this video by talking about fossils, specifically leaf fossils. More specifically, ones that came from about 15 million years ago. The fossil was found on a mountain by the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and as you can see, it is a truly unique fossil. While leaf fossils may not be as exciting as dinosaurs or human mummies, finding ones like these can 100% help scientists to identify species of trees and plants that lived in the area once upon a time, especially since Earth looked a whole lot different all those many years ago. The intricate patterns on the fossilized leaves allow researchers to understand the climate conditions of that era, as certain leaf shapes and structures indicate levels of moisture and temperature. These fossils often contain details down to the cellular structure, showing evidence of the plant's growth patterns, and even traces of ancient insects that might have fed on them. By analyzing these fossils, scientists can reconstruct ancient ecosystems, piecing together how plant life adapted to shifts in climate over millions of years. Discoveries like this also offer clues about past atmospheric conditions, as plants can reflect carbon levels and other gases present at the time. Ultimately, leaf fossils like this help fill in the story of Earth's past, adding vital chapters that show how life on our planet evolved and responded to changing conditions. Number 6. Mountain rainforest. When it comes to mountains, the higher up you go, the lower the oxygen level is, and also the lower the moisture. Now, only specific kinds of trees can actually grow really high up in the mountains and only up to certain heights. But in Mozambique's Mount Lico, there is an exception to that rule, because unbeknownst to most of the world for quite a long time, if you were to actually go up to the top of that mountain and then look inward, you would see a rainforest inside of an outcropping in a mountain rock. Remarkably, this hidden rainforest has remained almost untouched by human activity, preserving an ecosystem that has likely existed in isolation for thousands of years. Scientists exploring Mount Lico have found rare and unique plant and animal species, some of which are not seen anywhere else on Earth. The high-altitude rainforest has created its own microclimate, allowing moisture to accumulate and sustain lush vegetation. This self-contained environment has intrigued ecologists, as it may offer insights into ancient forest ecosystems that were once more widespread. Mount Lico's rainforest, only accessible by a challenging climb, feels like stepping back in time to a pristine, unspoiled wilderness. As you can see via pictures and videos, it is an actual and real rainforest in this mountain, and it's something to behold. One can only wonder the amount of time that it took for such a place to form. Number 5. Rocky Mountain Treasure. The worst part about treasure stories is that we are not the only ones finding the treasure. Enter Forrest Fenn, a writer and researcher who allegedly hid a treasure in the Rocky Mountains, and then stated that one of his poems would guide people to it. As you can imagine, this treasure hunt got a whole lot of publicity, and people then went to try and find it. Some actually died in the attempt. Many dedicated years to the search, analyzing every line of Fenn's poem, decoding it in countless ways to try and pinpoint the location. The hunt became an obsession for thousands, who scoured maps, dug through archives, and even traveled across the Rockies in hopes of finding the elusive treasure. Some treasure hunters even filed lawsuits against Fenn, claiming they were misled or manipulated, adding a legal twist to an already bizarre saga. When the treasure was finally found in 2020, Fenn shared a photo of the chest filled with gold coins, jewelry, and other artifacts, but kept its specific location a mystery. His secrecy led many to believe that the treasure's discovery was a setup, fueling conspiracy theories and endless debates within the treasure hunting community. In fact, when the treasure was allegedly found, Fenn wouldn't disclose where the treasure was actually discovered, nor the identity of the man who found it. He simply said it was a man from back east, and that one of my poems guided him to where it was. He did take pictures with the treasure to prove its authenticity, but some people still think it was a hoax. Either way, it does turn out to be quite the strange tale. Number 4. Iron Age skis. Easily one of the biggest questions people have about ancient times is, what did they do in their free time? Well, the answer is that they didn't have much free time because a lot of their lives were spent just trying to survive the harsh terrains and life they were living. In Norway over a millennia ago, they were also apparently fans of skiing. In 2014, archaeologists found one lone wooden ski frozen in the ice on a mountain in southern Norway, and then in 2021, they found the other ski. The pair had leather straps attached, indicating that they were designed to secure the skier's feet, a remarkable adaptation for the cold and snowy environment. The craftsmanship suggests that skiing wasn't just for practicality but may have had recreational or even ceremonial significance. Further analysis of the skis revealed hints of pine tar residue, possibly used to waterproof the wood and help the skier glide more smoothly over the snow. They were made from different types of wood, showing that early Norwegians had a deep understanding of materials and their uses in harsh conditions. The discovery has sparked curiosity about whether skiing was a common activity in this region, practiced by many or perhaps by a select few with unique skills. It was buried much deeper in the ice, which a lot of people feel may be the reason it was better preserved of the two. Examining the skis showed that they were handmade, and that led them to not being identical. However, they were well used because they had signs of repair work. The question is, did the ancient Norwegians have a ski club? Number 3. Noah's Ark. Ever since the printing of the Bible, people have been trying to locate the supposed location of Noah's Ark, and some claim that they have. The thing about the Christian Bible that many don't get told is that it does have historical accuracies as to what happened in the real world, such as the domination of Rome, certain emperors, and other world events along with real-life locations and more. One of the biggest events of the Bible was the flooding of the world that Noah and his family only survived because of the ark he built and how righteous he was. To this day, people are still searching for remnants of Noah's Ark, and in 2023, some people in Turkey thought they had found traces of human activity up on top of Mount Ararat that date back to the Ark's alleged time. Now, they didn't actually claim they had found the actual Noah's Ark, and they have since admitted they need more time to research what their findings actually are. But could you imagine if they did find a piece of the Ark in the end? Number 2. Unterberg. Are you ready for another rabbit hole story? In Germany, there's a mountain known as Unterberg, and this mountain has been the source of hundreds of weird stories and disappearances for a whole lot of years. For example, a family went to explore the mountain, found a cave, went inside, and then vanished for 3 months, somehow ending up on a ship in the Red Sea with absolutely no clue how they got there. That is just one of the crazy tales that the mountain has to offer. In another instance, a group of hikers reported losing several hours, with no memory of what happened during that time, only to reappear at a completely different spot than expected. There are also accounts of individuals seeing strange lights hovering over the mountain, which vanish as suddenly as they appear. Some locals believe that time itself behaves strangely on Unterberg, with watches and electronics mysteriously malfunctioning or displaying incorrect times. Folklore even speaks of secret tunnels running beneath the mountain that allegedly connect to other parts of Europe, creating a network of hidden passageways. These eerie stories have attracted paranormal investigators, hoping to unlock the secrets of the mountain. Others include things like going through a portal and ending up on the other side of the mountain somehow, seeing dwarves inside the mountain, and even more. So yes, it does get pretty weird, and there are some legendary people who went to the mountain and came out changed, including even the Dalai Lama. So what is the actual truth here? It might be best that we just don't ask too many questions, you know? Number 1. Gravity-defying goats. And now for something different, because why not? Goats are incredible creatures if you give them the time of day to impress you. They're stubborn and hardy, and they have more skills than you may realize. In this case, have a look at these videos, and you will see that goats seemingly defy gravity as they begin to climb mountains. Specifically, they're so good at climbing up mountains that they can appear to be defying gravity as they basically climb up a sheer vertical cliff. Their hooves are uniquely designed, with split toes that provide a remarkable grip and a rough underside that creates traction even on the smallest ledges. Additionally, their incredible sense of balance helps them navigate narrow paths that would intimidate most other animals. Mountain goats also have a low center of gravity, which allows them to maintain stability even on steep or shifting surfaces. They use their powerful leg muscles to leap between narrow ledges, allowing them to scale difficult terrains with agility and confidence. These skills are not only a survival tactic for escaping predators, but also allow them to reach mineral-rich areas on cliffs that other animals can't access. And before you ask, no, they do not actually defy gravity. Rather, they have such sure feet that they can stick them on and put their full body weight on rocks that humans would likely slip off. Thus, there is truly no mountain that a goat can't climb. That's a wrap from the world's mountain discoveries. Which of these findings did you find the most interesting, and which ones took you by surprise? Let me know in the comments below. Check out the other cool videos on the screen, and I'll see you next time.